Pray with me. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So these past few weeks, I have gotten to hear some great stories about Christmas surprises. And several of these came from people who are in this sanctuary tonight. Sometimes the story is from the perspective of the one who received the surprise, like the person who to this day is amazed that when she was younger, her parents were able to get a giant swing set put up without her ever seeing it happen. And sometimes the story is from the perspective of the people who went through the work to create the surprise, like setting up a trampoline at night in the freezing cold. Right, David? Aren't those precious stories? And they had me wondering, why is surprise worth such effort? Why is it such a joyful thing to surprise our loved ones? Why is it so fun to buy angel tree gifts to surprise children we don't even know? Why do we sometimes like to wrap gifts in misleading shapes so that they can't be guessed? Why did my sister once go through so much trouble one year when I was little to trick me into thinking I was getting kitty litter for Christmas? But really, why does something about love make us want to surprise the beloved with something unexpected? I wonder if it's because somewhere deep in our souls, we have this awareness that God finds deep joy in surprising us too. Surprise seems to be a defining characteristic of how love works in the world. And it's because love shows up, even in the places we don't expect it, even in the places we are told it cannot go. Love shows up. Love surprises. The Christmas story is a story of surprises. It's to the poor shepherds, not the holy priests, that God sends the angels. It's to a lowly manger, not to a palace, that God sends the Holy Family. It's to an oppressed people, not the ruling empire, that God sends the Messiah. And it's into the dark night of hopelessness, not into the bright spotlight of celebrity, that God sends the light of the world. God will show up where God is not expected, even where God is supposedly not allowed. God, it seems, delights to surprise us. And so on Christmas, when we take joy in surprising one another, I wonder if it's because deep down in our souls we know that's what love does. When I was in 5th grade, my mom had to have an emergency life-saving surgery. And it was the most scared I'd ever been. We weren't sure how it was going to go. And when it did all go well, our joy and relief were matched only by our exhaustion. But on the same day of the surgery, in the middle of our fear and exhaustion, my sister turned 13 years old. A birthday party was the last thing on our minds, so there was nothing. No presents, no cake, no plan. At least that's what we thought. Our pastor had a different plan. To our surprise, he called together the families of the church. They went shopping. They bought cake. They bought balloons. And today we have a sweet photograph of my sister celebrating her birthday at a kitchen table surrounded by the saints of the church. The meaning of that party was far deeper than happy birthday. I was only a child, but still on some level I understood that in that sweet surprise, our church family was making us a promise. They were telling us, if you have to bear pain, we will bear it with you. If you have to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you won't walk through it alone. If you have to face the darkness of fear or grief or loss, we will face it with you. And whatever light we have to shine, to illuminate some part of the shadows, you better believe we will lift it up and let it shine. Are we not our truest selves Is the church not its truest self when we do that? When we show up where love is not expected, where love is not allowed, where darkness seems by all appearances and all accounts to reign, and lift up our lights? Like that birthday party, God's surprises for us are more than sweet. They are holy, they are sacred, they are revolutionary. Divine surprises change us and they change the world. The incarnation of Jesus Christ changed the world. In 1845, the abolitionist James Russell Lowell wrote a poem that would become the anthem of the anti-slavery movement in our country. In one of the powerful lines, he writes, "Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne, yet the scaffold sways the future." Lowell used that intense image of a scaffold, an instrument of public execution, to name this reality that so often it seems that those who stand up for justice, mercy, peace, equality, and the inherent worth of all people are punished, derided, and yes, even killed. And at the same time, so often it seems to be evil that reigns and influences prophets and rules. Truth on the scaffold, wrong on the throne. Yet here is the divine promise, the earth-shattering divine surprise. It's the scaffold, not the throne, that sways the future. That poetic image was significant in 1845 when the nation faced the moral crisis of slavery. That image is significant now as we face the moral crises of today. And that image is also significant as a lens for looking back to understand a story from the first century of a Christ child born into poverty. Emperor Augustus on the throne, Governor Quirinius on the throne, both busy at work trying to figure out how to profit more off of people, both utterly consumed with protecting their own power from any threat, willing to use any means or cruelty necessary. And where was truth to be found? Where was love and light to be found? Out on the margins, surrounded by poor shepherds. Wrong on the throne, truth in the manger, but the manger sways the future. The hope Lowell wanted to call people to in his poem is the same hope that Christmas shines into every dark night. No matter what power sits on the throne, no matter what evil seems to rule the earth or our own lives, God has a surprise in store for us. Always and forever, there is a higher power, a higher truth, a higher love, a higher justice. And it is so powerful, so ultimate, so true, and so good that though it may face the scaffold, be relegated to a manger or hung upon the cross, in the end, that power, that truth, that love, that justice, that incarnate God will have the final say. On this holy night, when we come together to rejoice in the child born to us, we receive and proclaim the most beautiful of surprises. The manger sways the future. The baby in the manger holds the future. So we rejoice. We rejoice because God's power, true power, works to bless those who are overlooked, hurting, forgotten, and in need. We rejoice because God's power, true power, is humble and not self-serving. We rejoice because God's power, true power, does not exalt itself, but helps the lowly, proclaims good news to the poor, heals the sick, binds up the brokenhearted, eats with outcasts, forgives sinners. And we rejoice most of all because God is not far away and inaccessible on a lofty throne in a hall of power. No, God sought us out. God took on flesh. God lives among us. Christ is born. Christ is here. So we are sent out into the world as bearers of the most glorious surprise. There is a hope that brings good news to the poor and proclaims release to the captives. And there is a peace that can turn swords into plowshares. There is a joy that can make deserts burst into bloom. There is a love that bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. There is a light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness will never overcome it. The manger sways the future. Alleluia. Amen.